The more you see of this wild, beautiful country, the more you want to see. It's part of the great American wilderness. Some folks think it's the best part, and they've been saying so for a long time, more than 150 years, since mountain men like Jim Bridger and map makers like Powell first walked through these mountains. Up here, where the mountain meets the sky, is God's country. The rugged Uinta peaks, an impressive 13,000 feet high, run east to west, the only range on the continent that does that, and cross the north-south path of the Rockies to make a turbulent, scenic wonderland. There's air up here, water, cleaner than you ever tasted, preserved in a dozen great national parks and wild areas. And they all belong to you. And there's wildlife here, more than you'd ever see if we hadn't come along to show it to you. There are deer by the thousands. And bears, brown and black and cinnamon. And the country cousin to the beautiful deer, the awkward-looking moose. Up on the high plateaus, herds of elk. With camera blinds, long lenses, fast film, we've captured the life of the wilderness for you, right here in the trackless beauty of the Rockies. The people who are lucky enough to live up here, the center of the greatest recreation area in the high country, still call it by the old Indian name, Utah. It means high in the mountains. Here is Jerry Romney, who was about to take his family up into that wilderness. Now, with a trailer, all you need is a quiet, level spot near a pretty place. You can stop whenever you get tired. In this case, on the shore of a little pond. And if you like what you see in the morning, there's no rush to leave. Stay and visit a while. The neighbors don't seem to mind. Prairie dogs are friendly. The owls may look you over pretty carefully, like this little fellow. Well, that hawk could be bad news, and the baby owls know it. But life goes on at the pond community. The raccoon, the Canadian geese, they all carry on with their chores. These desert ponds are chock full of wildlife, underwater as well. Spring is the season for tadpoles, all learning how to be frogs. Kids and frogs go well together. But then kids go well with most things. And the frog seems happy. For a busy insurance man who doesn't get away much, this kind of lazy morning is a real treat. Old Lady Coyote doesn't have any fear of this family. Coyotes have an instinct about people who don't mean them any harm. If she were afraid, She'd never let the pups come out of the burrow. And here they come, ready for breakfast. That's the oldest way in the world to call someone without raising your voice. My granddad used to get my attention that way. Of course, sometimes he'd hit the bullseye and swear he didn't mean it. These pups are about 3 weeks old. Born in the spring, by fall, they'll be big enough to go hunting on their own. Coyotes are one of the few species that seem able to adjust their birth rate to their survival rate. In areas where they're not threatened, the females will produce fewer pups. And down here, where flash floods cut the deep gullies that provide a natural sheltered home, with prairie dog towns and nesting birds to help the food supply, the coyotes do pretty well. So this litter is small, just 5 or 6 pups. All right, line up for inspection, kids.
What are you guys watching? Oh.
Uh-oh, Lucille made a noise, so everybody back in the hole. Come on, Rascal, you two.
Look at that, Dad. Boy, she is beautiful.
Come on, Jenny. I'll lift you up.
Get up here, Jenny. Get a good look at that big waterfall. That's how these canyons were formed, waterfalls and rivers washing the rock away.
How high up would you say that is, Dad?
Well, it's got to be 500 or 600 feet anyway, Jeff.
Daddy, how did these mountains get made?
Well, these rocks were once upon a time in the bottom of an ocean. Many, many millions of years ago, this sand was piled layer by layer, and with the weight of the water pressing it down, it turned into rock. And then there was a big upheaval, and they raised right up out of the surface of the earth.
About 220 miles south of Salt Lake, the Virgin River has carved out these spectacular canyons, some of them a half-mile deep. Between the action of wind and water over the years, the rare heavy rains and flash floods cutting sharp arroyos, many layers of colorful rock face have been exposed. Sharp eyes and patience could count all the ages of man here. This part of the high Colorado Plateau has some of the most arresting rock formations in the world, and some of the most surprising hidden beauty spots. Springs and waterfalls creating unexpected oases. Rarely are they by the side of the road like this one. These falls had special meaning for the Paiute Indians who used to roam this country. Every spring, the young girls who were ready for marriage were brought here for a week of ceremony and meditation on the renewal of life. The melting snow poured new water into the little canyon, and the spring flowers burst into bloom. Dream of the Maidens, they called these falls, and the name came down to us, along with the healing habit of meditation on the beauty of our world. Our old friend the hummingbird is quite at home here, carrying on her family duties as if she were in your backyard. There's a joyous burst of color when spring reaches these high, hidden canyons. Plants and flowers familiar to us at home, like rhododendron and azalea, mingle here on equal footing with flowers you see only at this altitude. Shooting stars, mountain forget-me-nots, laurel. Here's a grouse making her home among the grasses. The flowers have their brief day in the sun. The insects work along the forest floor. There is a universe in this tiny canyon, a peaceful, well-ordered world. And as day ends, the deer come down to browse in the lush greens. Next day, moving farther south and east, a road following the beautiful Virgin River, with snow still on the mountains in the distance. Here's a group of prairie chickens at home on a high, grassy plateau, with a colony of marmots in the rocks nearby, who are wondering what this parade is all about. These are the so-called dancing maids. They inflate air sacs in the sides of their necks, which makes them more attractive to their females, they think, and then they let the air out. This little marmot decides he's heard enough, but the courting dance goes on for the benefit of one little female, until there's an interruption. Strangers are approaching. It's best to hide. Now, pound for pound, there's hardly an animal who can hold his own as well as a badger. And no animal like the coyote for not knowing when he's met his match, even when he's hunting in pairs. The badger wants to investigate the coyote's den, but Mama Coyote isn't about to let that happen, and there they go, hard at it. Now Papa Coyote gets into the act, and together they stretch old Badger a bit. Now, if you've ever wondered why badgers tend to be long and skinny, now you know.
Jenny.
The kitties.
You're looking at what?
Kitties.
The kitties? Oh, those aren't kitties.
Yes, they are.
They're not the kind we know about. Do you know what those are? Those are skunks.
They're kitty cats.
I think we better go.
Now, what's got this fellow's attention? Would you believe that pesky coyote's still looking for someone to raise a fuss with? Well, he's picked the wrong customer this time. Don't ever let a skunk get mad at you. He's liable to turn his back on you. There he goes. Look out! Antelope Island. More than a playground, more than the usual state park. At the southern end of the lake, it's a game preserve with a special purpose. It serves to bridge the past and the present.
Come on, Jenny, look what this says here. It tells all about the animals and all about the island. Look at this.
says the antelope were first seen on this island by white men clear back in 1845. John C. Freeman and Kit Carson conducted a successful hunt and then named the island Antelope, after the antelope they shot on the island. During the intermittent periods, antelope were planted on the island. Around the 1890s, herds increased only to diminish later in the 1900s due to overgrazing by livestock. Listen to this. And the buffalo. Buffalo existed on Antelope Island thousands of years ago, but disappeared before pioneers arrived in Salt Lake Valley. In 1893, buffalo were...
We protect our buffalo now. We have to. There aren't many of them left. But time was when buffalo meat fed the Indians and the early settlers and all the gangs of hungry workmen who built the railroads across this great country. And not so long ago, this fellow was in your pocket. His outline stamped on the nickel that bought a candy bar, a reminder of our old West. Now that looks like fun, doesn't it? Heavy-coated animals like to get dust in their hides. Helps to clean them, keeps the ticks down. Well, here's our old coyote friend sizing up the buffalo. He's got some kind of mischief in mind. I wonder if that's the same fellow who tangled with Skunk. I'll say this for the coyote, he never knows when to leave well enough alone. 40 pounds of him is no match for a ton of buffalo. Well, he got him moving. Must be the same coyote. That shows you the power of second-hand skunk. A famous naturalist once said, coyotes, while cursed by man, are beloved of God. Their only fault is they're fond of mutton. Well, as a result, man has shot and trapped and poisoned these little fellows in a regular slaughter. But the fact is, we need them. We need all predators. They're part of the plan. The coyote has survived manslaughter because he's not only strong and stubborn and smart, he's flexible. He's willing to eat almost anything. Grasshoppers, cherries, frogs, stranded fish, watermelon, juniper berries, apples, plastic surveyor's tape, duck eggs, garbage, old shoes. In fact, almost anything he can chew or swallow. Now, these little fellows are learning to talk. And lesson one is yelps, barks, and howls. Baby frogs, peepers, hard to hold, but awful easy to hear. On a quiet night, their sound will carry better than half a mile. Animals are like children much more than you'd think. They get bored and make up games and get pesky just to have something to do. Now, this badger'd be happy just poking around in holes, but the coyote's got time on his hands. And being a coyote can't let well enough alone. He's going to tease that badger and give it no peace. But the badger doesn't want to play, and it would take 2 coyotes to stretch him. So the game ends with the coyote getting his paw nipped. Oh, he'll be fine. And maybe he'll learn not to be a pest, but I doubt it. Old Badger is going to sulk in his hole. One of the many high mountain ponds this area is famous for, with an abundance of fish and wildlife. This old owl knows there are people around, but they don't bother him. Dragonflies, the fish feed on them. And here's a red one. That's unusual. Looks like that old owl's only interested in that frog for dinner. Rock rabbits are plentiful up here. And so are the deer, grazing undisturbed. The males are growing their new antlers, still covered in velvet. Females don't have antlers. That whole rack will fall off come wintertime, clear down to his skull. And next spring, the deer will start on a new set. The little fella sounds a warning. That squeak means he's alarmed about the presence of strangers in his part of the forest. The old deer decides not to take any chances.
Look, isn't that cute? What is it?
That's a prairie dog, Lucille. A white prairie dog. That's an albino. That's rare.
Even little girls like to wander off alone sometimes. It's all part of growing up. And what better place than a mountain meadow all in bloom? Wildflowers by the jillions, violets and wild phlox, home flowers and trillium, lupin and bishop's cap. You can hardly name them all.
Ladybug, ladybug, fly away from your house is on fire and turn all alone.
It's a good afternoon to see what's going on down by the creek. If you get away from the others, you may get in some good fishing. Well, muskrat means there's a beaver pond nearby. The two generally go together. And a beaver pond is always interesting. Good day for a bath. But this fella seems to need something more than water. I guess with that thick, oily coat, he's got a few fleas living with him. Bears love honey, everybody knows. To get some honey, go where it grows. Where does it grow? Follow the bees. And that's why bear cubs climb up trees.
Look at that.
Do you think those baby cubs have a mother nearby?
Are you afraid?
Not with you here.
What do you think I am, Superman?
Well, everybody knows you're Superman. Jeff, Tim, they know it.
Yeah, but does the bear know?
Off to explore a high mountain meadow. The prairie dogs have never seen a cycle before. They don't care if they ever see one again. And it's too much noise for the geese. It's fun trailing through an aspen grove. That old blue heron isn't bothered, or won't let herself be. Visitors or no visitors, a woman's work is never done. A pair of bobcat cubs daring themselves to fall off and get wet. Good country for bobcats up here near timberline. Food's plentiful with all the prairie dogs and the pikas, the rabbits and birds. These cubs won't hunt for themselves till fall. That cycle is a new sound for them, too, and they don't like it. That's one way to tree a bobcat. Run a cycle down near him. Now, he'll keep climbing till he runs out of trees. Jerry and Lucille reported seeing evidence of a beaver pond, so the men of both families are off to try to find it. Hiking and exploring are half the fun up here, and a beaver pond is a good excuse for adventure. They're going through young aspen and birch, secondary tree growth, which is what beavers look for, so they should be getting close. This woodpecker is too busy to care. And there's the old man himself. He's got a good-sized stream to work with, and he's following his trade, damming the stream to provide a home and food for his family. One aspen tree that size will provide enough bark to feed a family for a month. And he's got quite a family. Beaver kids take longer to grow up than other animals, Old Man Beaver has to figure on having the youngsters underfoot for 2 whole seasons before they take off on their own, which is one of the reasons he works so hard and cuts down so many trees. Now, that may seem like a lot of tree, but the old man and the kids will cut it down to size, and they'll get all the good pieces stowed away. Remember, beavers don't hibernate. They keep right on eating all winter long, and that takes a lot of bark. That winter activity is another reason they make the pond so deep and build the dam so high with so many chambers. The entrances are down deep underwater. The home burrow is near the bank, and that's where all the food is stored. The beaver takes no chances of being frozen in with his food supply blocked by ice. The beaver creates kind of an ecology loop. He cuts down all the nearby trees for his dam and builds his pond, and that brings a heavy growth of water grasses at the marshy edges, and the moose move in. Meanwhile, where he's cleared the trees, the sunlight encourages meadow grass and brush. In time, the beaver pond slowly fills with silt, and he's used up all the young trees nearby, so he takes his family farther upstream to start all over again, leaving behind a series of high mountain meadows. And then the deer move in to feed. Nighttime comes to the high country. Soon the stars will come down to rest on your eyes.
There's a pretty view up here.
It really is. Beautiful morning.
Okay, now we just have about 15 minutes.
All right, thanks. Come on. Honey, we're going to be out here looking around while you guys get things ready.
All right, we got about everything. Yeah. I don't know if I like this walk or not.
You guys got everything now? Here's your sleeping bag. Now, are you sure you have everything that you need?
Mom,
Well,
we've
God,
got
what do you think
everything.
we are?
We've got enough
Well-
equipment here for an army.
Okay, be careful. I don't want anything to happen to you guys.
I don't think we'll starve to death, you, Jeff.
Come on, Jennifer. Let's go look at the scenery.
Give Dad a kiss bye.
Up here, a mile above the valley floor, nearly 2.5 miles above sea level, the clear, thin air and brilliant sunshine make for a brightness of color and a clarity of light that the Tetons are famous for. Jerry and Jeff are about to explore the range that some people think is the most beautiful in America. Certainly one of the most dramatic. Wildlife in the high meadows hasn't had enough contact with man to be afraid of him. This little chipmunk here was in and out of our cameraman's pockets all day long. The Tetons are fault block mountains, which gives them a harder, sharper look, different from volcanic and folded mountains.
Hold it a minute, Jeff. Get a breath.
Boy, that is a steep climb.
Yeah, this thin air at this altitude makes it a little tough to get your breath, too. Got to go right up to that point. I'd kind of like to get a bearing, see we're just where we're sitting.
Okay.
That's north right up that way. Let's head right on over the ridge.
Okay.
How's the pack?
Pretty good, yeah.
Let's head down to this point where we can see down in the valley and we can decide what trail we want to take to get across. I'd kind of like to get over by that glacier.
Okay.
And have lunch there.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, let's go.
The eagle has a new sanctuary now, about 200 miles downstream on the Snake near Twin Falls, Idaho, thanks to the famous naturalist Moreland Nelson. Mountain goats peacefully occupy the crests. Very little climbs up this high to endanger them, and there's enough grass in among the rocks to feed on. This fellow's contentedly following his hobby, chewing his cud. The bears are peaceful and happy with a high plateau all to themselves. You know, mountain goats aren't goats at all. They're related to the antelope. And they can do those tricks because they have incredible non-slip pads on their hooves. Well, they're not used to having company. This little marten has a peaceful life up here at Snowline. Come on, little fella. Up you go.
That feels kind of good. Ah, my shoulders were...
Meanwhile, way down below them, the Snake River coils its lazy way, providing a natural refuge for all the birds and wildlife of the region. High above the river, an osprey is keeping a sharp eye out for lunch, but gives it up now and glides in to join his mate. Here's a quiet tributary stream to the Snake, really back country here, more than 25 miles from the nearest sign of civilization. The moose is a cousin to the deer, and isn't that hard to believe? Oh, note the duck on the right. He's figured out a clever way to bite the other one on the tail. The moose have a peaceful life here, not much to disturb them generally. And the bees keep the pollen and the honey going around. And in the normal course of events, each leaves the other strictly alone. But not always. Once in a while, a moose meets a bee. Wow! And another bee. Wow! Now there's a hurt moose. He doesn't care if he ever sees that bee again. Now, do you know what's good for a moose hurt? A moose kiss. That makes it well. Here's a rare sight, trumpeter swans. They're very loyal to their mates. They're like the eagle. They have to be protected from hunters, too, since many of them don't migrate, but spend the entire winter here. You know, there's nothing more rewarding to most people than the time they spend going off by themselves. Time to think, to feel. Time to recognize the values of life and solitude and distance. A mile may not seem like much until it's a mile up. That's like a different world. Here they're on their own, a man and a boy studying the immensity of creation. The jagged mountain peaks, the track of a glacier whose last retreat was made only 15,000 years ago. The birds and the animals around them living their lives out without caring about mankind. Creatures you can't see around you for the most part. They're there all right. Our cameramen had to stay patiently hidden in the blinds for hundreds of hours to get the pictures you have seen. Now here's Bernie the bear cub, browsing just like a bear cub should. He's content with no one to bother him because Bernie thinks nobody could. But wait. Here comes Sneaky the coyote. He has nothing pressing to do. The devil makes work for idle hands, so Sneaky comes up with a couple of plans. This is a dull and restless day. Maybe Bernie will come out to play. Bernie thinks not. A bear cub should rest. But a coyote's a coyote, and therefore a pest. Now the bear seems to think that coyote's dumb, but he sneaks around and nips him on the butt. The squirrel thinks that's quite a game. And back comes Sneaky for more of the same. Whoops. That's 2. 3. Why won't that bear play? It's enough to discourage a fella. He's just sitting there on where it hurts. And there's 4. You know, when animals are contented, they're just like kids, looking for things to amuse themselves. You know these 2 clowns are having the best time teasing each other. And now that Bernie's getting interested, Sneaky pretends he doesn't care. But look out, just let Bernie turn his back, and there's number 5. And 5 is sufficient for Bernie. He says, if that's the only game you know, I might as well turn my tail and go. I sure would like to hear what that squirrel has to say when he gets home. But so far, Sneaky has had a good day. And now, off to find somebody else who'll play. In the high country, the color comes early. The aspens are the first to turn. Their color is gold. It's time for the animals to prepare for the cold they know is coming, and time for visitors to think about leaving. This cougar's coat is already thickening for the winter months ahead. There is a season to all things. If spring is the season of hope, fall is the time to remember. The time to think back, to sort out your memories, to count your blessings. Jeff not only got an inch taller this summer, but deep inside, he's grown to limits we can only guess at. When our young people are exposed to the call of the wilderness, the ecology of the land, it makes a permanent impression. In years to come, you'll see them back out there drinking in the richness of the great outdoors. Take time now to store up memories to last through the long winter. Like the great flights of Canadian snow geese heading south. Something about the sunlight flashing on their wings, and you'll remember forever their voices in the thin mountain air. You know, folks say in this life everything changes. You can't go back and find it the way it was. Well, that's not altogether true, because come next spring, there'll be new cubs learning to bark. There'll be badgers getting stretched out to a proper length. There'll be bears learning to play the coyote's game. Because when you love the wilderness, you know some things will never change. The kiss of the moose goes on forever.